this meeting. Okay, let everybody know the meeting is being recorded. And we will, as per usual, be uploading the recording of the meeting as well as our PowerPoints to MassDEP's website within a couple of weeks, and we'll let you all know when that is up there. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, especially if you're new to this group, with your name and your affiliation. And you can also, just a reminder, if you want to add your affiliation after your name, click the 3 dots up on the right-hand corner of your screen, your picture, and then you can type in, and then click rename to put your name in and your affiliation. That's always nice for folks to know who's here. Please use the chat for questions, comments, suggestions. We will have plenty of time for that, and Kathy, and I have 2 Kathys actually on my team who are with me today, will be helping us manage the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen here, and we will officially get started. Okay. All right, let me know if you are seeing, you are seeing my screen. What are you seeing, Kathy?
Yes, we're seeing it, but it's not in presentation mode.
Yeah, I need to go slideshow, don't I? Let's see.
Yeah,
and I was looking for that first. Okay, from current slide. Okay, we good?
Great.
Actually, yes. Okay. Yes, our agenda very quickly. We have a busy afternoon ahead of us, and I want to give plenty of time to our guest speaker. When we went at our last meeting in April, I polled folks on the call about whether we would like to have guest speakers, and there was a generally overwhelming consensus that yes. And so I invited Emily Barker, who is the executive director of Reuse Minnesota, to join us. And Reuse Minnesota is the only statewide nonprofit that I know of, Emily, you can correct me if I'm wrong, devoted strictly to all things upstream, reduce, reuse, repair, share, rent. It's something that I have long wished that Massachusetts might have and might someday in the future have. So I invited Emily here to inspire us and sort of give us a picture of what that might look like. I think that as we work to really focus our efforts more upstream, we need the kind of support that a statewide organization dedicated to that effort could provide. So Emily's going to do some sort of high-level sharing about what Reuse Minnesota is all about. There will be plenty of, please feel free to post your questions in the chat as she talks. And then we'll also allow people, if they would like to are you seeing sorry, Kathy, are you seeing notes or just the slides?
I see, no, I see the slides, guest speaker.
Okay, terrific. Okay, all right. So let's turn it over to Emily. I think you just need to unmute yourself and we should be ready to go.
Great, thank you very much, Brooke. It's fun to be with you all today. I'm just going to move my video to the other screen here. And I think, let's see here, you're either going to have to allow me to share or make me a co-host. I just realized.
I have stopped sharing and you should be a co-host. But you know what? I'm going to make you a co-host again. Let's do that again.
Might have dropped when I had to leave.
Okay. All right. So you were a co-host and should be able to share your screen.
Perfect.
Great.
All right.
And we just need, you to go into slide sharing mode and
Except for are you seeing the preview?
We are seeing the preview.
How about that?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I'm excited to be with you. It's kind of fun to do this kind of a presentation, especially right now. Reuse Minnesota just celebrated 10 years in December. So it's a fun way to reflect on who we are, where we've been, where we're going. We've been doing a lot of that as an organization. So I appreciate the invitation to speak with you. And a few things before I get started. My name is Emily Barker. I'm the Executive Director of Reuse Minnesota. I use she, her pronouns. And for those of you who may not be on camera or have camera, I am a late 30s white woman with about chin length brown hair. All right, a little bit more about myself. I am a longtime reuser. I like to share this because I feel sort of lucky that I get paid to do this work that I have loved my entire life. I grew up in Montana where it was I was in one of those, we had to reuse for a matter of financial necessity in many ways, but also just because that's who we were. We were rural Southwest Montana folks, and that's what I grew up doing. When I got married, I wore my grandmother's wedding dress, which she made out of a World War II parachute. So I come from a line of folks who advocate for and really live reuse. I've been a materials management professional. Some of you might know this as solid waste, and I love that term. So I've adopted more of the materials management approach. For the last 10 years, I worked for the previously for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, which is similar to MassDEP, and the city of St. Louis Park, which is a first-tier suburb of Minneapolis, and now for the last year and a half, they have been with Reuse Minnesota. All right, so who is Reuse Minnesota? And I'm starting off with a little bit about who we are, how we were created, how we're funded, so you all can get a picture of if you are going to do a similar type thing, what you might need to consider as you move forward. So we are a member-based network of reuse businesses, supporters, and advocates. We have different business level memberships and educational and government memberships, as well as for individuals. We were founded in 2012. Initially as a 501c6, which is, if you're not familiar with other parts of the 501c tax designations, it's a nonprofit trade association. So we were specifically originally formed to be a trade voice for the reuse sector. Well, if you know anything about the world of fundraising, it's really hard to fundraise as a C6. It's next to impossible. You can get some grants, but it's really difficult for charitable donations. And the reality is we wanted to do more as well. We went the educational side. So the organization was converted to a C3 charitable nonprofit a few years later. And we did, I will say, but before we had our own organization, we were affiliated with the organization, the National Reuse Alliance, which is no longer in existence, but there was like a state chapter version before we became our own organization. And then the organization was primarily run until my position in 2021. We did have a contract for a period of time. We had a management company and then have a grant that allowed for my hiring in 2021. But most of the work has been done by folks who've given their time as volunteers. I'm not going to read these. We just went through a process last year for the whole purpose, mission, vision. And it's interesting when you try to really boil down as a reuse organization who you want to be. And there's that dynamic of like, we really want to set ourselves apart from recycling. We don't want to alienate our colleagues in recycling because we know that the systems are connected, but we really do want to be specific about who we are and what we do. And that we see this as really part of the regenerative or circular economy. I know that those are some of the buzzwords that you got to be careful about, who you include when you use certain language, but we really like the regenerative approach, especially being here in an agricultural state where there is a lot of approach to regenerative agriculture as well. So we felt that that word worked well for us. But our real goal is to connect folks through the reuse sector, whether they're coming to us through education, promotion, advocacy, or just to build those connections. We have a board of directors. As a nonprofit, we seek to have folks from a variety of different sectors: government, for-profit, nonprofit, individuals, folks who've been doing for this a long time, folks who are new to this work, small business owners, folks who are doing all sorts of things. We have our first board member not from the state of Minnesota. Some of you may know Mayur Dankara, who is with the Green Mission, and they are on the East Coast. And so it's fun to have somebody joining us with a national perspective. They've been members of ours for a while. And it's exciting to have that. So I just show this because that's something to think about as you're developing an organization. If you're going to run it as a nonprofit, you want to think about Who's going to be your leadership, and how do you ensure that you're inclusive of a lot of different folks? And that can mean a lot of different things. We were really concerned, our struggle right now is representation for Greater Minnesota. So we have one person from a Greater Minnesota county, but we really are metro heavy, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul area heavy. And that's a goal to work on in the next couple of years as well, is really getting some more representation in Greater Minnesota. So that's something to think about as you think about developing an organization like this. How we're funded. So our big money right now is legislatively designated dollars through our Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. And in short, this is actually lottery money, which is designated for environmental purposes. And I could tell you what LCCMR means, but I don't remember half the time, and it's not something that you need to know. Just know that the legislature actually designates this money. So it's a process where it's recommended and then it's actually a law. So our funding is in the law in the state of Minnesota for, it started in 2021 and goes through the end of, or kind of late this year. We also have other grants through counties, and we just received one through the state of Minnesota, which I'll explain later. We have memberships, so our members pay dues, which is an important part of funding our work, especially around advocacy, where our grants sometimes limit things. We can't work on policy or fundraising, so our membership dollars help with that. And we have a conference in the fall, which definitely helps. And then new is donations. We are not an organization that has typically asked for individual donations, but we realize like it's one of those legs of the stool, right, where you really have to diversify those funding sources. We're currently in a campaign for our 10-year anniversary, and it's an interesting process to get folks thinking about doing fundraising a little differently. Again, this just because a good chunk of my time is covered. This is the Environmental Trust Fund. If you're interested, it's not really relevant if you're outside of the state of Minnesota, unless you want to understand the significance of a program like this. You can look up the LCCMR and the Environmental Trust Fund. All right, so what do? We have our buzzwords that we like to use, but these are the main. If you break it down, we educate, advocate, promote, and connect. And most of our work can go into those buckets in some sort of way. Many things, of course, overlap, but I'll try to break it down a little bit so you can get a good picture of what we do in each of those. So for education, we do a lot of presentations, trainings, and webinars. We present to county citizen groups. So we have these master recycler or community ambassador groups that give presentations to community groups, schools. I co-developed a workshop for real estate agents with one of our member organizations, Rethos. If you're interested, the next one is on March 7th. That's a free virtual workshop if you're interested. Even if you're not in real estate, the idea is to help real estate agents think about what they can do with reuse while they're helping people sell and buy homes. And so it's a fun, we do have a recorded version too if you can't go on the 7th, but it's a fun way to engage a different sector that is very intimately involved with the coming and going of stuff and can really help people at an important time when a lot of waste is generated. We have a workshop on how to host swap events, one for government and one for community groups. We do a lot of tabling, state fair, community events. If any of you know, I don't know about Massachusetts, but Minnesota, it's the state fair is the great Minnesota get together. It's, you know, the one time that will come within a few feet of our neighbors. So it's a great place to connect. They have an eco building there, so we are able to chat reuse with several thousand people in a course of a few days. One of the most exciting things right now, and launching in literally 2 weeks, is a program that we have funding for through Hennepin County, which is where the city of Minneapolis is located, and the western suburbs of Minneapolis. It's a fairly small grant in comparison. It's $10,000, so it's not insignificant. It definitely is a nice boost to our programming. And basically, it allows us to work with 2 schools over the spring, the next couple of months, to have classes. And so we'll be doing classes on like once or twice a week, going into the classroom, talking about what reuse is, why it matters, what's the difference from recycling, why that distinction matters, how you calculate and look at the environmental benefits, the social benefits, and then we'll have guest speakers from different sectors, textiles, electronics, and building materials, who will come and talk to students about what they might do as a career in those fields, or what the environmental impacts are of those things when we don't reuse and repair them. And then we'll have a final week to really help students think about incorporating these ideas into their life, and then planning for an event that they will share with their community what they've learned. So we're really excited about this. And I know I've been on a few other presentations where people have been really surprised, like, how on earth did you get into the schools? And I honestly don't know, because Minnesota must just have, I don't know, it was not a hard process. I reached out to my county contact and she had some teacher recommendations, and I reached out and I had several teachers respond that they would love to do this. So maybe our curriculum allows for more flexibility. Our goal is to eventually have this be like an actual state standard, toward the standards, so teachers can actually incorporate it into their classroom process on their own. We would have it as something, since it's publicly funded dollars to create it, have it as something that would be available free to teachers to use. So if any of you work with teachers, definitely reach out, because I'd be happy to share what we're developing, or schools, happy to share what we're developing, and you can customize it to wherever you are. But the goal is to really help young folks think about pathways to careers in reuse, or lifelong connections to reuse, whether that's mending their own clothes or buying things, or even if they don't work in the reuse sector, to think about how they can help the companies they do work for manage the materials that they have, instead of just getting a dumpster when a remodel happens. How do those businesses incorporate reuse? Because that's the reality, that most businesses aren't reuse businesses. There are other businesses that need to incorporate reuse into what they do. So that's part of what we're also trying to get young folks to think about is, as they develop into adulthood and what they want to do with their lives, what can they do to incorporate reuse? And future connections, as I mentioned, the full-on curriculum. We also want to connect with DEED, which is our Department of Employment Development, and they have an apprenticeship program that I would love. There's really nothing connected to reuse in the apprenticeship. You can learn about being an electrician and a plumber, and the plumber, carpenter stuff and mechanic are about the closest you get to repair. There's nothing around textile repair or electronics refurbishment. And wouldn't it be amazing to have state stamped approved internships for those types of programs? So my goal is to get DEED on board a little bit more as we move forward. Another thing that we're excited about is we just got, and we don't even have a fully signed contract yet, but we just got awarded a grant from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency through their Environmental Assistance Grant Program, where later this year we'll start, for 18 months, we'll be doing free textile repair clinics in a neighborhood of Minneapolis that does not have access to a lot of that. So we'll be working with a lot of folks who live in multifamily or who are unhoused to do textile repair. We'll be offering free classes, a combination of virtual classes or hands-on learning to repair and learning how to build those skills. And then the other real fun thing is we're working with one of our member organizations that's a thrift shop in that neighborhood. They'll be hosting some of the events, but they will also be collecting materials that they get donated that have small damage, a zipper that needs to be repaired, a button that's missing, and then we'll have sewists that we'll be hiring through the grant. We'll take those items, repair them, and then return them to the shop. And the idea here is to see, what is it like to help a small entity repair, a small thrift shop, repair things so they don't just have to trash them or pass them on to some other place that who knows where they go. And so we're really excited for this grant. I have a personal connection to the thrift shop too. It's one I've shopped at and volunteer at. And so I'm excited for that partnership and just to really see how we can get ourselves more in the community as well. Advocacy is another big thing that we do, and this can look a lot of different ways. We are involved with a few different groups around reusable to go where. We're just starting one here in Minnesota in partnership with RCUP. Some of you may know them. They do a lot around stadiums and concert tours. They worked with U2 several years ago on their tours to do reusable cups, and they're based here in Minnesota. They work all over the US though, and they're a strong advocate of this, and they're one of our members, and we're working with them to build this coalition to really try to promote an ecosystem and policy that support reusable foodware more substantially than it is right now. So we're really excited about that. That's brand new. We're still kind of writing our purpose and goals out, so more to come on that, but you can find that on our advocacy page as we grow. We're also involved with the Northeast Recycling Coalition. Some of your neighbors in their reuse forums. I'll be speaking at the April one in case you're interested about our impact report, which I'll explain in a slide or two. But that's been a really fun way to connect with folks across the US on all things reuse, especially around building materials and such. Policy, right to repair is a policy that we are hoping, given our legislative landscape right now, to get across the finish line. It's been introduced since 2015. So this is a policy that would require manufacturers to provide parts, diagnostics, tools for things like electronics and farm equipment. Right now, there's a lot of issues around this, especially in our farming community. And, there's opposition that maybe isn't totally surprising, but the reality is that farmers and folks need to be able to fix their stuff to own it. And I know Peter's on the call today. He's well versed in that conversation, and maybe others of you are too. Your neighbors in New York, well, yeah, you're in your area, they passed right to repair for consumer electronics, which is very exciting. I know that there were some disappointments about some concessions that were made, so we're hoping that we might be able to fill a few of those loopholes here in Minnesota and then expand it to some other sectors. So we'll see. Wish us luck. The other thing that we've supported is a deconstruction template, ordinance template, which Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has taken the lead on, and really trying to get more cities to adopt that. We had our first city, which actually happens to be where I live, St. Louis Park, that did adopt a deconstruction mandate for specific projects that are funded or get special city or county government funding, basically TIF or things like that, where they get or special permitting that they will have to do deconstruction. So we know that there's things like part of our high school that's going to have to be deconstructed in the next year or two when they do their remodel. So we're very excited about that and would love to see more. And then of course we advocate for funding. We promote funding like the deconstruction grants that many of our counties offer. We advocate for it. We're partnering with an organization called Eureka Recycling to help maybe get some funding through a zero waste bill here in Minnesota that's based on some federal legislation, but to really kind of tweak it to make it Minnesota oriented. So that's a few other things we're looking at around funding. One of the projects we were able to do through our LCC Mark grant is a business needs assessment. And the goal is to take what we learned to advocate for our reuse businesses. We contracted with an entity called Native Sustainability, and they surveyed businesses to determine what the priority needs are. And we heard a lot of different things. Funding, things like that was a big deal. Another thing that really surprised us was a lot of these small reuse businesses really struggle with the fact that they don't own their own buildings and they can't make upgrades, or it's not worth it to them to make upgrades because their property owner doesn't value that, or they don't know the next time some chain might come in and they might lose their lease. And so there's this real challenge about having quality reuse businesses, small independently owned businesses that don't have the ability to keep their properties in good shape. And that was something that was both not surprising and also was totally not on my radar. And so that's something that we're working with some of the counties and helping them kind of think about maybe what they could fund and really think about that long term. If you're interested in learning more about the business needs assessment, our contractor will be presenting at our February member meeting, which will be on the 15th. And that is a virtual meeting. So you all are welcome to join us. And I'll be dropping a few links after I'm done in the chat. So it will include a link to register for that event. Promotion, a big part of what we do, of course, is promote what our members do. We share their information, their jobs, their news, exciting things when they reach monumental achievements or have events. We share them on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media. We have member features in our YouTube, and of course we share that in a newsletter. So we are always championing our members, and that's one of the things that we hope people will become members, is to get that advocacy. Sometimes it's a little bit of an awkward situation where we have people who reach out, hey, will you share this at an event? And it's like, well, that's a benefit we offer for our members. And so trying to figure out, like, how do we be supporters of reuse while also maintaining that value add of the membership? And so that's something we've been working through in the last year to really refine of what we do and don't offer folks who aren't members, and then folks who are. We have a directory. This is almost a year old, a couple of weeks, and it'll be a year old. We had a directory before on an old website, but we totally rebuilt our website. It's a searchable directory, and one of the things that's a priority this year is to get it integrated with Google Maps, and so that'll be a priority in the next couple of months. It continues to grow as our membership grows, but you can see all of our members and click on them to kind of see what they do, learn more about what they offer, and what kind of sector and such they're in. The next thing is another project that we did through our LCC Mark grant. We contracted with an organization called Eunomia. They're out of the UK, but they also have offices in New York. So we worked remotely with them to do analyzing the reuse sector data that we purchased through Dun & Bradstreet. And this built on a couple of previous studies. We did one in 2020, and then the state of Minnesota did one previously. But we really refined it, doing some weighting where we took the data that was there and said, you know, if you got bookstores, yeah, they do reuse, but really it's probably 20% of what they actually do. So trying to weight the data a little bit more and get it more accurate. We also updated the model. So we were previously using a Carnegie Mellon model, which is no longer updated. And so we switched to a new model. And if you're interested in this, because believe me, this is a wonky data deep dive, the report and press release are coming next week. So keep your eyes out for that. I will be sure that Brooke and Kathy and others get that, so they will see it and can happily share. If you like such things, there is all sorts of data to geek out on here, but there's some interesting trends. I love to see things like upholstery as some of the highest benefit for that, because it's something we don't do enough of and we need to prioritize. So it shows some sectors that really have kind of highest benefit, as well as which have the highest impact just based on the sheer number of them and things like that. So you can see that. And then I'll be sharing a very small amount about that at our member meeting. We did have a presenter at our conference in October talk about that, but the report will be out in a week. Okay. The next thing, of course, that we do as a member network-based organization is connect folks. And this is one of my favorite things. I always say, like, working in government, the greatest thing about my government background, I think, was the fact that it was always my job to try to connect with a lot of people. Could not be insular in the work that I did, whether it was, folks in greater Minnesota, metro, private, nonprofit. The goal was to connect with lots of folks. And so bringing that to this position, I love doing that type of thing. So this type of event is really fun. We have our conference that we do. We did one in October, and we'll be doing another. We're working on a date. So maybe if you're inclined to join us, we would love to have you come. We did have a virtual component last year, and I'm pretty sure we'll do that again, depending on our meeting space. We had a virtual track, but if you're able to join us here in Minnesota, October is a lovely time. You can come see the leaves change with us. Although I'm sure you have the leaves change too for you, but come to Minnesota. We do quarterly member meetings. The February meeting, as mentioned, will be completely virtual. So if you're interested in coming, you are welcome to. And then we started doing some speed networking. We did one in January, in this month, 2 weeks ago. I know Brooke was there. It was a lot of fun. It was just great. It was 45 minutes over the lunch hour on a Friday. And it was so successful, we're going to do it again. We're going to keep doing it. So March 10th is our next one. You're all welcome. We'll do another one in April, and then probably again in June. So join us for those. It's just a fun, low and very informal way to meet some folks and connect. All right, the last thing I want to talk a little bit about is areas for growth. And I bring this up just because all this might go, oh my goodness, they're doing all these great things. This is fantastic. And it's true. And it certainly is. And I, as someone who had a massive learning curve coming into this position, if you looked at my career on paper, executive director of a small nonprofit was definitely not in the cards. And if you had told me that 10 years ago, I probably would have laughed in your face. It is certainly not what I expected to be doing with my life. And so I've learned a lot. And I've also learned a lot about the organization specifically and kind of what we need to do, processes we need to develop, things that were totally unexpected. And so big things that we struggle with, and the size of Minnesota makes it sometimes difficult, is that greater Minnesota outreach and ensuring that we're representing folks who aren't in the metro area, don't have access to a million different resources in terms of businesses or easy access to shopping. And so really ensuring that we're intentional about that. So we'll be on the road a bunch this summer for that. Our small business membership is also a tricky piece. I get told regularly that our memberships are too expensive and that our memberships are too cheap. And it's this weird thing of like, it's all a matter of perspective, right? If you're really tiny, then $100 is really expensive. If you're huge, then $300 is literally smaller than a drop in the bucket. And so one of the things I want to do, and this is something to think about, is have a fund, hopefully get a corporate sponsor, tell me a couple $1,000s a year that can essentially be a scholarship for our small businesses. If you want to be a member, here's some money that we can access, so we can give 20, 30 businesses a year a membership to be able to get access to the directory listing and things like that. So that's something I'd really like to focus on in the next year. And then our board development. As I mentioned, we've done a really great job of getting a lot of folks across different sectors, but we know we have areas that we're not representing, or folks that we need to support in different ways to ensure that they're able to fully participate. And so that's a big thing in the next year as well. And of course, I'd love to invite you to join us, whether you want to join us as a member from afar. We offer memberships for anybody, regardless of where you're from. Come to our events, as Emily already mentioned, follow us on social media. And if you're so inclined, we'd love to have you support us through donations. And I know that that's kind of a funny ask in this type of situation, but it's one of those things where there are a lot of different ways that organizations like ours thrive. And these are all different ones. And if there are ones that work for you or more than one, we would greatly appreciate that. And with that, I'd be happy to take some questions. Brooke, did I touch on all the things we talked about? That feels like it was sort of a whirlwind, but
you did, Emily. It was really outstanding because I've written down a whole bunch of notes too. And yes, we will go to questions. I love educate, advocate, promote, connect. That's just such a great summation of what you do. I'm also really glad you mentioned right to repair, because I will say that I haven't checked. Let's see, the deadline for filing legislation in the Massachusetts two-year legislative session, which started January 1st, was last Friday, I believe. We've had right to repair pending in the Massachusetts legislature for, gosh, I'm going to say at least 3 consecutive sessions. I would be surprised if it wasn't reintroduced. And I will also say, oh, there's Janet posting. We definitely filed right to repair. Excellent. And Massachusetts is home, and we can pat ourselves on the back. We're home to the very first right to repair law in the country, and that was adopted on a voter referendum back in 2012, I believe. That was the automotive right to repair, which says that that if we want to go to an independent repair shop, manufacturers of automobiles have to share diagnostic tools and manuals, so that we're not just obligated to go to the manufacturer of our vehicle. And in fact, Massachusetts voters upheld that law. There was sort of the industry tried to make an end run around it again in 2020, and we reaffirmed our commitment to right to repair for our automobiles. So hopefully, and I what I know is that Rep. Feeney is a huge, I think he is the sponsor of the right to repair bill in Massachusetts. So it's exciting stuff. MassDEP does not get involved in legislative initiatives, but we're sharing information here. So I feel comfortable at least passing that information along. And I will say the speed networking was absolutely wonderful. I made 2 incredible connections, one of which was somebody in California who I invited to a meeting the very next week, and he came and shared fabulous information. So it was folks from all over the country, not just Minnesota. So we've got a hand up with Phil, and we have some questions. Kathy, do you want to go to the chat and read off any of those if you're able?
Sure, I can do that. Why don't we let Phil ask?
Okay,
Looks
sure.
like he's unmuted, and then I'll pop into the chat. Thank
Great.
you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Phil from the town of Bourne, Cape Cod. Wondering the model for what you do. I believe you mentioned at the start you're funded through a state law. This is a state quasi-government agency. Do I have that correct?
So we are a fully independent 501c3. However, the good portion of our funding currently is through a legislatively designated grant. So
Okay.
the funding itself is government, but we are an independent 501.
Okay. So one of the difficulties in Massachusetts is that we don't have a state organization, DP obviously does a lot of work, and, but we have a statewide recycling group, and I believe we have the president on here, and I was a past board member, but funding is always a challenge. And so if you could forward a link to the model or the legislation that creates that funding mechanism and what the rationale was for it, that would be very much appreciated, I'm sure, by a lot of us, because we're a lot of times left to independent municipalities to kind of come up with these programs and promote them all independently ourselves. And, it's a lot of work, and we don't have also statewide. Connecticut just had the governor announce a whole support for EPR. So we're working on these things in Massachusetts, and we have our own unique challenges in Massachusetts, as Brooke knows. But anything that kind of helps the municipalities out, like this funding model, I'd love to see if you could share that with us, just because, we want to try to leverage the messaging amongst all of us. And whether it's fees for packaging that can go in to fund this or something, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, so the LCCMR, I put the link in there. It is a very unique chunk of change. And that's because it's the lottery dollars. And I'll be fully, I'll go on record to say that I personally have ethical issues a little bit, to be honest, with being funded by lottery dollars. Just lotteries are complicated and who they impact, and but it's one of those things where it's like, if they're going to fund something, I guess if this is what it is, I don't mind that it's environmental things. So the LCCMR, so the Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund, is this lottery money. So it's like the funding is like 79 million every 2 years, or every year, or whatever, because they have new 2-year grants that start every year. So it's a big chunk of change. It's a lot of money, and it's done through the LCCMR, which I will tell you is the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. And essentially it's a commission that goes through all the applications and says, these are the ones we want to recommend to the legislature. That all starts, the proposals are due in April, and then over the summer they consider them, and then they make their recommendations by August, and now they're actually going to the legislature to be voted on. So projects that will start later this year, we're applying right now, a year ago. And so it's a big process. And it says since 1963, $1 billion have gone to 2,400 projects. So it's a lot of money. The other thing I'll mention is our organization specifically got off the ground in part through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's Environmental Assistance Program, which is, it's also money that gets appropriated through the legislature, but it's not that. I mean, it's the PCA does it as a pass-through grant. And I will see if I can find that link.
It's year to year. You have to apply every year to this trust fund.
The trust fund, you'd have to apply every 2 years. Yep, so it's 2-year dollars or 2-year funding, and it's very competitive. So honestly, getting funding back to back is really difficult.
How much do you get? What kind of dollars are we talking?
So the LCCMR, the first one, the lottery money, we have $334,000 over 2 years, but that's a small one in many ways. There's one I know that's wanting to work on mattress and furniture recycling, that their application is for $3 million over 2 years. So it kind of varies.
Thank you. I don't want to take up all the time. That was just, I wanted to see the model. Thank you so much.
It's a good question, Phil, for sure.
Yeah.
For environmental assistance, I'll just mention with the PCA, that's what helped us get started 10 years ago. They helped provide funding to, kind of get it up and going. I don't remember how much that was for, but that was through the environmental assistance program through the pollution control. So it'd be like MassDEP having its program, and I'd have to look and see how much money that was, but that was a much smaller grant.
And I will say that would not be outside the scope or realm of MassDEP's grants to help an organization start that. So keep that in mind. Janet Dominance raised her hand, and maybe she has something to weigh in on funding. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Janet.
You must be reading my mind. I just want to flag that the Brooke mentioned last week was the deadline for filing bills. We filed an update to the bottle bill, the container deposit law, and we put back in the provision, for those who remember in the old days, the unclaimed nickels went directly to DEP. It was a dedicated fund. It was established in the statute. And at some point in, the early 2000s, that dedicated fund was dismantled and the abandoned nickels now go to the general fund. We want to reestablish that dedicated fund, which I think, could be used exactly for something like this. Of course, we want 100% redemption of the deposits, but nothing is ever perfect. So there will be some money to go to an effort like this. And we put it in the updated law. And we, of course, also proposed going from a nickel to a dime now that it's 40 plus years later. So anyway, I know this is not supposed to be a whole conversation about how do we fund an organization like Reuse in Minnesota, which sounds awesome, but I did want to put that flag up for.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Janet.
I think
Kathy, are there-
the funding is definitely an important thing to think about, Joe, too. If you want it to be staffed, if you want it to be, long-term, that what the goals are. I will just add, I put a link in. We have a solid waste management tax. So in Minnesota, everybody pays tax on trash, but not on recycling and composting. And that's been in place for many years. And a good chunk of that goes back to counties and such for environmental or for recycling programs, education and such. And then those go to the cities. There's a good chunk of that actually goes into our general fund. And there's lots of people who want to get more of that actually into solid waste stuff. I would love to see more of it come to promote reuse. And there are conversations around that, but that is something that we do. And that's a unique tax because nonprofits, churches, literally everyone pays it. Government, you cannot get out of that tax. So it's a good fund. And then there's some counties that have their own.
We looked at that years ago. A disposal surcharge is what it's called in some states. Basically, right? You pay a tax on waste and nothing for whatever is diverted. Yeah, what a great idea. Are there any legislators on the call? Just kidding. So I think I saw one question about, and I'm just conscious of our time because we have a lot of other stuff to get to. There was a question about memberships, and maybe what I'll suggest is, I think that was from Donna Neely with the Great Exchange, that you reach out directly to Emily with your membership fee question. Kathy Mirza, am I missing anything else in chat?
Sure. Well, Peg Hall asked, what age or grade for the youth reuse in the schools would you recommend?
Okay.
This program is high school students. And we did that in particular because we're looking at kind of career where they're headed, soon. But I would love to do programming with younger students too, but we really wanted to focus on high school at the moment.
Excellent. Janice McPhillips asked, what is the name of that thrift shop in Minnesota?
Old school. I'll put it down. So if you come to Minneapolis, I will, it's a fun one. It's just outside downtown Minneapolis. I can put the link here.
Marianne Romulador from NERC posted links to several different reuse. Let's see, it looks like a webinar and a registration link. So thank you, Marianne. Stephanie Blumenthal asked, has anyone worked with supermarkets in terms of encouraging customers to reuse mesh cloth bags for produce?
And I think if you want to answer that, we can connect in the chat. So specifically mesh produce bags. That's a really good question, Stephanie. I don't know. I know I use them because Trader Joe's actually sells them. So I use mesh bags when I shop at Trader Joe's. Although I do hate their produce packaging. All right, we're seeing some great stuff. Somebody who taught reduce, reuse to preschoolers. We've got so much other stuff to get to. Emily has put amazing stuff in the chat. I'm going to say, let's move on to our next agenda item. So let's see, I think, Emily, do you have to stop sharing for me to share, or maybe I can go ahead and share? I think I can go.
Well, the weirdest part is I can't find the stop share anymore. It's so strange.
Okay, I think
there we go.
Do you see MassDEP updates? Is that what people are seeing?
Yes.
And
You
am
just
I on?
want to put it in presentation mode.
I need to go to slideshow. Okay.
There
Thank
you go.
you. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to invite another Kathy on my team, Kathy Dudnoth, to talk to you about our newly relaunched resource online searchable directory that we call Beyond the Bin. That means not stuff that you put in your traditional recycling bin, not cans, not bottles, not paper, not cardboard. It's those, sometimes we refer to them as hard to recycle materials, things like plastic bags, things like old toys, textiles, furniture, old small electronics, you name it. And so we just relaunched this resource on our Recycle Smart MA website, and I'll ask folks to post in the chat some helpful links here. It is a work in progress. This is basically anybody can list on this resource. I'm going to turn it over to Kat. She's going to give you a tour. We direct people to this resource through our social media posts and through digital advertising. In November, we had 30,000 people look at the Beyond the Bin resource, just to give you an idea of how many people are going there. It's only as good as the resources we list in it. So we're inviting all of you, and Kathy will show you how to add a listing. If you know of a business that is taking back reusable goods, it could be a thrift store, it could be somebody that's deconstructing a home, whatever it is, we invite you to list. And I'm going to let Kathy, I'm going to stop share, and Kathy, you should be able to share your screen now and do a little live demo. And there she is.
Yep. Can you hear me okay, Brooke?
I can hear you fine. It says, okay, there we go. Excellent.
All right, so thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Dudnoth. I work with Brooke in the Municipal Waste Reduction Branch, and I work on the Recycle Smart initiative, which includes Beyond the Bin. So here's the tool. Like Brooke said, it's new and improved. Beyond the Bin actually did exist previously. It was kind of old. It had some issues, basically. It was old, it was outdated, it wasn't very modernized, and a lot of the listings that were available on that website got kind of out of control. They were very old, they weren't being checked. And so we realized the information that we had, it wasn't very up to date, and it could probably cause more issues than it was worth. And so we wanted to take a look at how to modernize this tool and make it more user-friendly, and make it easier for residents across the state to find a place where you can take items that are too good to trash, but can't go into curbside or drop off recycling bin. And so I'm very excited to share this. We launched it in November, and it's been doing pretty good, in my opinion, since then. Like Brooke said, in November, it had around 30,000 unique users that went ahead and completed a search. The numbers stayed pretty good. In December, it was around 12,000, which is still steady. And we're actually estimating that it's going to have similar numbers in January. So we're excited to see that too. So without further ado, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and do a search. So you come to the website, and one of our biggest things that we're happy about is that it's now available on the Recycle Smart website. So instead of having two different websites to share, it's now available one resource, a one-stop shop for recycling and finding a place to donate things. So you just come here and you can click the Beyond the Bin navigation thing on the top, and it brings you to our homepage here. And if you scroll down to the tool, this is the way that I recommend doing a search. So we can go right to the selected material category dropdown, and you'll see a bunch of options for material categories, anything from books to clothing to furniture, pillows, you name it, it's here. One thing about this list is that we actually did data from the old Beyond the Bin to kind of curate this list. So we looked at the top searches, what people were actively searching for, and we wanted to make sure to capture all of that so they can continue to search for outlets for these materials. So let's say you want to donate a laptop. If you look through this list, you actually don't see a laptop listed. But if you're unsure of where it might fit in, you can actually scroll right down, and we have a glossary of materials. And so because we kind of made these categories a little more broad, we wanted to be able to tell you what we mean by saying this. And so if you're thinking laptop, you might think it falls into computers and home electronics. So you can scroll right down, click, and you'll see all of the items that we're saying this category encompasses. So computers, laptops, monitors, etc. It's all included under this category. So now that you know which to choose, you can scroll back up, go back to the dropdown, and select computers and home electronics. Next, you can choose how you want to take this material or item in. We have options for drop-off, so you would take it to a set location. Pickup, so maybe the business or organization actually offers a curbside pickup. Or there are even mail-in options that we're trying to include in Beyond the Bin to kind of give the resident all of their options to be able to donate an item so it doesn't end up in the trash. I recommend leaving it on all three. This way you can see all of the options that are open to you. It's just more helpful, and it's like, it gives you more of a choice with how you want to get rid of this item. And then we move on to location. So with this, you can type in your city and state. I like to just do my zip code because it's a little faster. Oops. And you'll see here, it pulls up a list of locations that match what you've typed into the search bar. So we're just going to confirm that I'm talking about Brighton, Massachusetts. And then one more thing before you can hit search is you can change the radius. So this bar here, you can choose how far you want to venture out to be able to donate this item. I'm going to put it to 10 miles, but you could change it from anything to 1. I think it goes up to 50. So, you know, depending if you want to stay local, find something close by, or if you're venturing out into another part of the state and you want to see, you know, what's available to you. So once you have everything all set here, you just go ahead and click the search button. And that easily, you've got your search results page, and this will actually show you all of the locations matching your search. So this is showing us everywhere that takes computers and home electronics, either as a drop-off, mail-in, or pickup within 10 miles of the zip code that I put in. And the most helpful thing here, I think, is to choose to sort by distance, so you can see specifically what is closest to you. Once you hit this, it actually re-searches, and it'll show you the ones that are closest to you. So now that we scroll, we can see there's a Staples, there's a Best Buy, an Apple store. You keep scrolling, there's more options. The further down you go, the further away they will be away from you. There's even multiple listings here. You can click to a different page and you'll see all of the other options. But again, keep in mind, the radius will get bigger and bigger as you go through the pages. So let's say I just want to go to Staples. It's the first one. It's likely the closest place. So we'll click into that. And can you see the new screen, Brooke?
Yes, yep.
So now this is the listing specific page. So this is all the information you wanted to know about the Staples. We have the name right here. We've got the address. We've got their website related to their take back program. So you can always click that, see what else they take, more information about what they do with the item when they take it in for recycling. You've got contact information, phone number and email address if you had any questions. One thing we always want to tell the residents to do is double check the website, you know, call the store, make sure the hours are right, make sure there's no holiday hours, like anything could happen and it may not be reflected on this website. So we're always saying double check on the listing, the locations website to make sure everything is good for you to take your item in. If we scroll down, we see that they only take materials as a drop-off, so you have to take it into the store. Here we have important notes, which is basically a description of the location. Here it has more information about their recycling program, but listings can say, or, you know, put anything that they think the resident would need to know. So, you know, if you're located in a tricky location, you might put, you know, walk in and go down 3 flights of stairs, whatever it may be, just to help them kind of find where you are and have a little more context about what you do, what you accept, all of that. When we go down a little more, you've got the hours that they're open. So it even says that they're currently open right now, which is good. And then you have the other materials they accept in addition to the one you searched for. And so I like this because sometimes when I'm doing a clean out, I'll realize I've got multiple items. And if I look at this listing, I'll say, you know, in addition to trying to donate this laptop for recycling, I can actually take my old cell phone that I found in the drawer from 10 years ago. You know, so it kind of gives you more context, lets you be able to see what else they take, what else you might be able to send for recycling, and know that it's going somewhere better than the trash. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about the listings. I just want to reiterate what Brooke said before. This resource is only as good as the information that we put into it. And so we like to think of Beyond the Bin sort of like a yellow pages, where we're hosting this information so that residents can try to find an outlet. So they're not wish cycling, you know, they're not putting these things in the recycling bin and hope that somehow it gets recycled, but they're actually actively looking for a place that will take it specifically to recycle, repair, reuse, refurbish, whatever it is. And so by having all of this in one spot, we're hoping to make a better resource and help it continue to grow. When it launched in November, we started with around 300 listings. It now has over 1,000 listings. And so it's continuing to grow. It's getting more places, more outlets for people to look for. And it's only going to continue to grow with your help. So I just want to show you one more thing. If we go back to the Beyond the Bin homepage, one sec. All right, so if you're thinking, you know, this sounds like a good place to kind of get our business or organization out there, you can very easily add your listing. And I'm kind of hoping that you do, because like I said, we want to continue to provide this resource so residents don't get frustrated with, you know, the items that are too good to trash. And this right here is the easiest way for you to do it. So if you come back to the homepage and you click the add a listing button, it'll take you to a form where, let's see. Sorry. It'll take you to a form where you can fill out all of the information that you just saw on that listing page. So the name of your organization or business, the location, your description or important notes about it, what kind of service, so whether it's a drop off, mail in or pickup, your hours, etc., contact information, everything that you need to include is right here. And then once you submit everything, or when you fill it out, you can hit preview. And I can't do it because I didn't fill anything out, but essentially it takes you to one page that shows you everything you typed in, so you can double check, make sure it's all good, and then you hit submit. And at that time, you'll get an email confirmation that you submitted a link, and I'll get an email that somebody else that submitted a listing. And at that point, if everything's all good and I review it, I can just approve it, and your listing will be published nearly instantaneously. It's that easy. It's just this form. And so again, we're just asking that if you do have locations around Massachusetts or in the surrounding area, if you want to take some of these materials off the hands of, you know, folks in Massachusetts, please add your listings. We've been sharing the link through our social media. So we have over 28,000 followers across 3 social media channels. We post the link to Beyond the Bin there. People are looking at it. We are also thinking of doing digital advertising in the future to get more eyes on this page. And so it's growing. People want to know what to do with these items. And with your help, we can actually give them an answer. And so with that, I think I've shared it all. Oh, if you do have, say, over 10 listings, you can send me an email and actually I can work with you on how to upload that without adding a separate listing for each. Using this add a listing tool is actually the most efficient way to get your listing up on the website very quickly, but it can take some time if you're doing it for over 10 listings. So there is a template that we use. It's a spreadsheet that you can fill out. I can upload it on the back end. The only thing with that is that it takes a little longer for it to be ready. So, you know, if you have any questions, if you want to know the best course of action for you to get your listing up, you can send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat, and we can talk more about how to get it up. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We've had a couple people comment, and I think this is a really good question, and we're going to have to say we'll get back to you. But as we build this out, could we add refurbish, repair type businesses to this? That's definitely going to be a question we'll have to bring to the software development team. But I would love to see that happen. That's so we stand by. And we'll put our thinking caps on and let you know about that. We have a ton of information to cover, but thank you so much, Kathy, for taking us on that tour. We're going to switch now to Kathy Mirza and talk about eliminating single-use plastics. We want to update you on a couple of initiatives that we are working on. And so I am going to ask, let's see, actually, I will advance the slides for you, Kathy. And so I'm going to go to the first one and let you take it away.
Perfect. Yeah. So as soon as that comes up, I'll just jump in, Brooke. So
you're right. Thank you. I do need to share my screen, don't I?
Yeah. And it's
Yes.
slide number 6.
There we go. Okay. You got that?
Yeah. Okay. So just for folks, I'm Kathy Mirza. I'm an environmental analyst from MassDEP. And in the past year or so, I've been working really closely with Brooke on steps to start implementing some of the actions in the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan that was released in 2021. And so, gosh, I was so inspired by Emily and what's going on in Minnesota. And so what we're doing might feel like just very early steps, but we are moving the needle a little bit, I think. So first, we're going to talk just briefly about eliminating single-use plastics. In the Reducing Reuse Action Plan, this is considered a priority material to try to eliminate disposable food serviceware. So we're thinking about how we can enable increased use of washable and reusable food serviceware for takeout from food establishments. And so the slide that Brooke has up identifies one of, if you want to go to the, let's see, yep, you're on the correct slide. One of the actions that is identified in the action plan is for us to initiate conversations with our State Department of Public Health to really understand the food code, any requirements about reusable containers, and what may be obstacles to greater reuse there. And in our actions, it's about connecting with the Food Protection Program and discussing how potentially changes could occur. And so we've begun these conversations about how we can provide some guidance and technical assistance to food service establishments who want to switch from single-use to reusable food serviceware. And in the coming months, we're going to be connecting with stakeholders and engage state and local health departments, restaurants and institutions, and service providers that support these systems. Next slide, Brooke. And so to do this, we are at the very front end. We've partnered with Recycling Works, which is our partner organization that works with businesses and institutions. They are funded by MassDEP. And we're working with them to discuss, they'll kind of consult with us. We'll be partnered on this project to discuss a process, some goals of what we might want to achieve in the coming year. One of our first steps is connecting with the Department of Public Health to put together a plan. And we are also going to be recruiting some interested health officials to get a better understanding of current practices and issues around reuse, because we know that it's sort of a hodgepodge out there. There's a lot of discretion on the part of local health officials as to what's allowed in the communities, because there's a lack of clarity, frankly, in some of the code that they have to follow. So if there are any interested health officials on the call, please contact me. I'll pop my email address in the chat once I'm done. But our plan is to really conduct some stakeholder meetings and listening sessions over the next 3 to 6 months with health officials, with an ultimate deliverable of a best practices guidance in collaboration with the Department of Public Health that will enable more reuse across the state. Now, I also added this one slide because at the same time, there are some interesting actions going on the federal level that dovetail with our work that's going on here in Massachusetts. So to give folks like it's a really complicated topic, but to just put a couple of key things on one slide. When it comes to reusables, this falls under the Federal Food Code. So the Federal Food Code is a model that the Food and Drug Administration has to safeguard public health. And it's intended to just provide a uniform set of standards for food safety. Now, Massachusetts and most other states follow this federal code, which is updated every 4 years. And what's been recognized is that there are really gaps in the code regarding reusables, and local jurisdictions are really seeking some clarification about this. Now, in just a couple of months, this April, there's a national conference where folks come together to where they accept comments for any potential changes to this food code, and that's happening this April. Now, Upstream, on the right-hand side of the slide, Upstream is a national nonprofit that's focused on reusables, and some of you may be familiar with them and the tremendous work that they're doing. So they're working really hard to change this retail food safety code. And they're going to have a presence at this conference, and they're focusing on 2 key things. Is the idea that customers should be able to bring in their own containers for takeout, whether that be from restaurants or bulk grocery stores, but any kind of food establishment, and that third-party sanitizing facilities would be allowable as a safety mechanism in this food code for sanitation. I just want to say that if any local government wants a variance through their health department right now, they could reach out on an individual level with your municipality and see what could be done while potential changes to the federal code may happen. But I just wanted to bring folks in the loop on this because we are keeping tabs on this as we begin our work in Massachusetts. And that's really the snapshot on the single-use
Thank
plastics.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Kathy's doing a ton of work. She's basically, my co-pilot on implementing this plan. So I'm gonna now ask Kathy, and we're gonna go to my next slide, ask her to give you, okay, why is my slide not advancing? Give you an update on our deconstruction work. Okay, there we go. And so let's move on to that. And then I promise you we are going to talk about funding, because I know there's people here that are anxious to hear about that. But go ahead, Kathy, and just tell me when you want the slides to advance, please.
Perfect. Yeah, will do. So one of the other priority materials that was identified in the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan is building materials. And so that's why we're starting to put our hands around this sector and what we can do to explore reuse here. So thank you, Brooke. Perfect. So this first slide tells you kind of how we're defining deconstruction. So we have put together a deconstruction working group. And just so we're all speaking the same language, when I refer to deconstruction, I'm talking about the process of disassembling a structure and its components to maximize the recovery of valuable and reusable materials. Now, this really does stand in contrast to conventional demolition, which we're more familiar with, which uses mechanical equipment like bulldozers, wrecking balls, and that type of action really does limit the ability to reuse any materials in there. Next slide, perfect. So on this slide, you'll see the goals for this deconstruction working group, and we have met a couple of times. You can read through those bullets, but our priorities and our goals are really to educate and share knowledge across all stakeholder groups, because this really does intersect and touch many different sectors. We are exploring market opportunities, efficient ways to connect materials that are in supply with those who want it. We're working to identify local deconstruction practitioners, learning about designing for disassembly and reuse, adaptive reuse of existing structures, and ultimately with the goal of creating effective deconstruction policies and ordinances. Next slide, Brooke. So we have had, thank you. We've had really high participation in our first two meetings. We kicked this off in September was our first meeting, and then December was our second meeting. We've had about 100 on the call each time, and you can see from this slide the different sectors that are represented at these meetings so far. And I will tell you that interest just continues to burgeon, that every week, Brooke and I are hearing from academics, reuse businesses, architects, officials from other states who are really interested in participating in these discussions. We invite all stakeholders to join us because this work really does cross many different sectors. The next slide gives you a little snapshot of some of the highlights from our first meeting. And I have a photo in there. I know there's someone on the call here from my hometown, so she might recognize what this photo is. But it's a slide that shows the demolition of the high school in my town that was recently completed. And if you look at the middle of that image, you can see that the bookshelves are still right there in the middle, which causes me to sigh, and I'm sure many of you as well, because we know we can do better, right? But at this first meeting, and this is what we're talking about, we really want to capture the value here of as many materials as possible and not just demolish it. So at the first meeting, we learned a number of things. We learned that about 30% of all that we discard in Massachusetts comes from the construction and demolition activities that we have here. That's more than 1.5 million tons annually, though we have really aggressive goals to reduce that in our 2030 master plan. We also talked about this term embodied carbon. And what that really represents is the upstream carbon or energy that's incorporated into the materials that comes from the extraction, manufacturing, transportation, installation, maintenance, and ultimately the disposal of all the materials and services that made that building. Now, as buildings become more energy efficient, as they are, about half of greenhouse gas emissions will be from this embodied carbon that we're talking about. Now, we're seeing mandatory deconstruction ordinances and regulations popping up all over the US and Canada right now, which is really exciting, and we're learning a lot as we go. And we're seeing that reuse is really possible when we can connect the dots, connect the stakeholders so that they can become knowledgeable about these technologies, training opportunities, ways to partner, and some assistance that's available to them. The next slide it gives you some highlights from our second meeting, which was about a month and a half ago, when we heard from some fantastic trailblazers who have been in the knee-deep in deconstruction for decades. And I think Dave Giese might even be on this call today. We were thrilled to have Dave Benink from the Building Deconstruction Institute, and both Eric Kruger and Dave Giese from Deconstruction Works, which is more New England and New York based. And we learned a tremendous amount in this discussion in December as well. One nugget was that the demolition of one American home, average size home, that amount of tonnage or weight is equivalent to a lifetime's worth of trash for one person in the US. We learned that there are at least 25 different categories of materials that can be captured for reuse. Windows, hardware, lumber, flooring, and I know we've got a window expert on our call today here too. We learned from some experiences that were shared during that meeting that as much as 60% of a house can go to reuse, that about a third can go to recycling, and that leaves very little that really ultimately has to go for disposal as trash. We heard about deconstruction supporting green collar jobs, and that some jurisdictions are already tapping into opportunities for inner city youth, for homeless veterans, for those who are previously incarcerated. So there are many labor force individuals to tap here. We also were very inspired by the photo here, which is an example of what Dave Benning shared, speaking about design for disassembly. So this particular structure was designed to be disassembled, and so they were able to capture 99% of it for reuse, right? It's actually possible. And that a trained workforce and the experience of these folks that were on the call can really construct a house on a very cost competitive basis. They can reduce toxins, they can really help low income and cost conscious renovators because that material is being captured and it's being made available to others to use in new projects. So last but not least, the slide here just shows you a little bit of detail about our next meeting, which is March 15th. And our topic's going to be reuse markets for these building materials. I welcome you all to attend if you're interested, and I can put my contact information in the chat so you can reach me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We're super excited about the deconstruction work, and our friends in Minnesota are also doing tremendous work there too. Kathy and I have been networking with them. We're going to be talking with Melissa Wenzel, who's on the call from our sister agency in Minnesota next week. And anyway, really, really exciting stuff. Okay, and I see some people putting some great stuff in the chat. We will put the meeting information, the link in the chat. Yes, we've got John from Center for Ecotechnology is a great an outlet for materials. So let's see, I'm just checking here to see if any chat. So I do want to keep going. I'm just going to give you a quick update. I think Gail is on this call, but we do have an ad hoc work group that's working on reducing single-use plastics in, I'm sharing, right? Okay. In K through 12 schools. And Gail is one of MassDEP's municipal assistance coordinators. She works up on the North Shore. She's actually working with another of our municipal assistance coordinators, Julia Green, and they've convened a work group because we hear a lot, believe it or not, we hear a lot from folks about how recycling is not even happening in schools. So there's a separate work group for that. I know, hard to believe. It's 2023, but this particular work group is focusing on reusables. And so they're meeting, I think, about 4 times a year. I was on their meeting last week, which was fabulous. We actually had some folks from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on, which was really a great connection. They're going to help get the word out. And what the group is talking about is, a couple of things: how to replace the cafeteria trays with reusables or durable washable materials. So getting rid of polystyrene and getting rid of even, we know of schools that have switched to biodegradable trays. Unfortunately, unless they're certified to be PFAS free, they may have PFAS in them. which is pretty frightening. It's sort of, I call it kind of pick your poison, and the solution to that is always reuse trumps everything. If you do go with a washable, reusable tray, you are saving on your landfill and trash disposal bills. You're saving on storage space to hold on to stuff you're buying. You're not having to deal with supply chain issues. Apparently, there's a lot of supply chain issues in this sector, just getting the stuff in, the disposable stuff. So, and then of course, replacing, things like cutlery, plates, cups, and installing dishwashers. So sort of back to the future, or refurbishing unused machines. We have funded a couple projects to refurb dish machines. And there's information on the Green Team website about that. And then also bulk milk dispensers, which we're just starting to learn more about. But milk cartons are not recyclable unless you live in the western part of the state. They go in the trash. A huge amount of milk is wasted. We had Ben Schleifer from the Center for Environmental Health out of Oakland on our call. I met him actually on the Zoom speed networking that Emily hosted, and he made the point that serving the same amount of milk to an 8th grader or a 6th grader as a kindergartner just doesn't make sense. So if you've got a milk dispenser and kids can serve themselves with a reusable cup, there's a little bit of training to switch over, but it's happening, and they're not that expensive. A milk dispenser costs about $3,500, so nothing to recycle. Your cartons don't go in the trash. So many opportunities there. Our micro grant program for reduce, reuse, share, repair is open to any school that wants to apply to us. It's up to $5,000 right now. We're going to talk a little bit more about the micro grant program and some changes we hope to make shortly. If you want to connect with this working group, send an email to Gail. Her email is there. And please join the group. We would love to have you. Getting like-minded people and champions together is how we make change in the schools. And we just see this as a huge opportunity for eliminating unnecessary disposables and providing food on containers and foodware that is healthier and safer for our kids. So, all right, moving on to funding news. So MassDEP has allocated some funds, some additional funds to actually implement the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. Kathy and I were really excited to learn about this last week. This is hot off the press, and I'm probably going out a little bit on a limb sharing this, but I really wanted to get this message out to people. So we sat down and met with my boss and my boss's boss earlier this week and kind of laid out what we thought our priorities would be and talked about how we would get the money out the door. And our consensus is that we will use existing vehicles, grant programs, and platforms to deliver this money out to the folks that need this to help. And I should say, we will be working on funding activities that were identified as priorities in the strategic action plan, the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. Some of our preliminary sort of target areas would be, again, reducing single-use plastics in schools, furniture, mattresses, and household goods. We continue to just see a huge need for this. We have some incredible furniture banks. They're all nonprofits that are working so hard. Some of you are on this call today that are collecting gently loved household goods, furniture, mattresses, and then distributing them through social service agencies to populations that need them. They might be immigrants. They might be people who were displaced by a natural disaster, which is happening with increasing frequency. They might be transitioning out of a homeless shelter. Many folks, or just living close to the edge, who need assistance. And one of the things that pains me, because I'm a Boston resident, is there is nothing to serve Boston, or really even greater Boston, in this regard. So, and I just see incredible stuff going out on the curb. I am a trash picker. I have rescued stuff. I rescued a wonderful chaise lounge and had it reupholstered a couple of years ago. and I love it. It's in my bedroom now, but we need more infrastructure. We really do need infrastructure. So we've heard from our furniture bank partners that repair of items is something that they're trying to do, but they could use more help there. And we think there's great opportunity there. So other preliminary funding priorities, deconstruction, you've heard all about that. I will make another plug for our micro grant. Folks that are interested in applying for a deconstruction grant, this would be for monies to help offset any additional cost involved in doing a deconstruction project, whether it be at a residential home or through a commercial home, can apply to our reduce reuse micro grant. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis, and maybe Janice who is the grant manager for that, can post the link in the website. We are talking about how we might change these, change some of these programs. Maybe the micro grant, which is $5,000, becomes a $10,000 grant, or maybe we have tiers. Maybe it's even a $15,000 grant. The question is how small, how big does it get before we can not stop calling it a micro grant? But we know that there's a lot of opportunity there and would like to direct some of our funding that way. Generally then public awareness and behavior change, doing a lot of some of the work that Emily's organization is doing, but promoting the benefits of reduce, reuse, share, repair, normalizing buying secondhand, repairing, borrowing, using libraries of things, expanding access to reduce, reuse, repair, share outlets. Again, and that also goes hand in hand with infrastructure. If we don't have the infrastructure, then we can't promote and get access for people to be able to find homes for their unwanted materials. And then doing a needs assessment, which is something that Reuse Minnesota has showed us, will show us the way on, I'm sure. What are the needs of these small businesses? I think the point about the instability caused by having to rent versus owning a space is a really interesting point. Because we know it takes a lot to keep these organizations running, and if we can identify some needs and figure out how we can better support them in the long run, we will certainly be moving the needle. I would also, frankly, love to have a statewide reuse conference. The last time we all came together was in 2016 for a national reuse conference we had here in Somerville, the MassDEP co-hosted with the Reuse Institute, but I think it's high time we do that again. So we are going to be going back and looking at some of our, let's see, actually, I'll run back here to the vehicles that we will use. In addition to the micro grant, we have our recycling and reuse business development grant. Those are larger grants, 25,000 up to a couple $100,000. We did actually award a grant for furniture refurbishment and reuse organization in Central Mass, which I don't know if it's public yet, but they applied last spring. We would really like to get more funding out to organizations doing this kind of work. So that's another existing vehicle that we could efficiently then disperse money to. We also have a program, we actually contract with CET, who's also the partner that runs Recycling Works, and they run our school green team program. This is curriculum and activities for school teachers. It's website based. The curriculum and activities are linked to the Mass curriculum frameworks, but through that vehicle, we also distribute equipment, recycling equipment and composting bins to schools. We could also probably use that to develop some trainings and deploy more resources to K through 12 schools through that program. And then lastly, of course, our Recycling Works program, which is free technical assistance to any business or institution that wants to reduce, reuse, share, repair, recycle, or compost. And so again, we may be able to offer trainings to targeted trainings through the Recycling Works program. So again, we're thinking, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to create brand new funding programs. It takes a long time to build a new grant program. Instead, we're going to be tweaking some of these existing service and grant mechanisms so that we can spend this money, which is frankly, we were told you can start spending as soon as we can get the the applications in. So we're pretty excited about that. Okay, let's see, time check. What have we got? It is 2:30. Okay, I'm not doing too bad. I want to give folks a chance to, unmute yourself and share anything. I have a few things I'll share. Peter Mui is with us, and he is, for most of you who know him, the founder of Fix It Clinics, and he's very active in Massachusetts, even though he lives on the West Coast. And so Peter shared with me a bunch of activities coming up. Some of these are Fix It Clinics. One of them I'm planning to log on is learn all about what a Fix It Clinic is. He's going to be at the Ashland Public Library, Zooming, actually with Kathy Mercer, talking about, what is it? What does it mean to bring a repair of a Fix It Clinic to your community? And then he's also doing a presentation to the Massachusetts Library Association about Fix It Clinics. Libraries are fantastic places to host Fix It Clinics. And the other thing I'll say about libraries is we're seeing a lot more libraries that are opening up libraries of things. So they are loaning everything from power tools to bread machines to musical instruments that maybe your child wants to try out before you invest, to tents and sleeping bags. So libraries are, I think, a really great opportunity for us to grow reuse opportunities in our community. Susan Casino, who is Boston's recycling director, emailed me and said she couldn't be here today, but she wanted to share information about their work on reusables. So Boston is issuing a request for information. Susan thinks it's coming out in April. I copied from her email. The idea of the request for information is to inform the city of Boston's understanding regarding zero waste dining and to create opportunities for reusable and refillable food service takeout containers in Boston. And I asked Susan, well, who's your target for the RFI? And she said both third-party dishware vendors. So think like a linen service, but instead of linens, they're bringing dishes in and taking the dirty ones home and back and washing them. And then also restaurants themselves. So she wants to hear from restaurants and cafes, anybody that's serving food, about how they want to engage around this. So Susan's information is there. I think this is huge. This is part of the City of Boston's zero waste plan. And so we'll be excited to hear more from Susan about that. I also got an email from Ralph Maselli, who's participated in this group before. He's not able to be here today, but he sent me not to share with the group, but my mind was blown when I decided I had to, a posting about, he's a contractor that's turned into a deconstructionist. And this is a 10,000 square foot home, 13 rooms. And I think I can click through. I mean, he's got everything listed from shrubs. If you like hydrangeas, there's some beautiful hydrangeas listed there. I'm a gardener. So I was salivating. Let's see, can I go to this? And will I still be sharing my screen? What are you guys seeing? Do you see upcycle on my screen or no? You
Yeah,
still see?
we still see the slide, but we
You
can't.
still see the slide? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
try to reshare this, just because this really, I mean, puts a fine point on it. Let's see, here we go. I think that might take us there.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. I mean, just to give you an idea, up here he had listed the shrubs that they're taking out. But I mean, I read through some of this stuff last night, and it's just staggering. None of this stuff looks very old. I don't know the age of this home, but all of this stuff is up for grabs. And he has it listed. I mean, we're talking HVAC systems, boilers, there's a tennis court, there's sporting equipment, there are multiple bathrooms there. And he's got specs listed on his website. So if you can, actually, let me see if I can post this or get this into the chat. It's just a great example. I mean, and this is, I'm hoping that Ralph will join us for our deconstruction meeting in March to talk a little bit more about, how does he source his end users for this? My understanding is a lot of it is really word of mouth. So that's why I figured it wouldn't hurt to share here. let me see if I can post this link into the chat. And anyway, just fascinating and pretty mind-boggling what stuff is out there and how just the possibility that could have, you know, gone to a disposal facility is is pretty frightening. I'm going to open it up now to anybody else who wants to share news, updates, events coming up, ideas, things you want to circle back on. I believe, is Emily still here with us? She's given us a lot of her time, so I would.
I am still here.
She is still
I'm
here.
interested in all you're doing too, so it's fun to see.
Okay. So, and then I do want to ask folks as well, and pardon me here while I slide master, no, Brooke. Yeah, just after 3 years, you'd think I would be a little more well versed here in this Zoom stuff. But and then also before we wrap up, I want to ask, when do people want to meet again and what are their thoughts? I'm seeing some hands going up. I'm going to call on Kathy to help me here and also to look at the chat, but I see Amy Perlmutter. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Amy.
Actually, Phil, I'm sorry, Amy. Phil has been waiting first. My apologies. Hard to see with his banner in the background. So Phil and then Amy. Yeah.
I'll be quick, Amy. So on the Cape here in the South Shore, we've been talking about household hazardous waste collections. This is a huge expense for everybody in the state, as you all know. So I think it's important to talk about reducing toxicity in the trash. So Brooke, if you could add that to the agenda for a future meeting. And specifically, I strongly recommend, if you could take this back to John and Greg, that the SWAC start a household hazardous waste subcommittee so we can plan on how to leverage models for permanent collection and transfer locations of different models and sizes, depending on the size of the community. So we can figure this out, because siting these facilities is difficult. Finding locations, maybe state land would be helpful. Financing them, you know, on and on we can go. There's a lot the state can do to help the towns. We're left to our own devices, or county. We have a strong county on the Cape, fortunately, but this is a major issue. We're always kind of, you know, and for example, we're doing a latex paint collection with our RDP money here on Cape Cod again, because we don't have paint care, but that's, you know, 60% of the cost of the household hazardous waste collection. So all of that rolled up, I think it needs to be on the agenda regularly. So I think if you could create a subcommittee, we can talk about maybe incorporating that into your grant program for future years, so that, or even maybe the state doing design for basic models the towns could just plug and play into the community. So I just wanted to get that on the table, because we're talking with Barnstable and Plymouth counties about what we could do to find something, and it's very, very difficult, yet it's desperately needed. As you know, in the winter we all get the phone calls, what do I do with this? I'm moving, I have a jar of mercury, you know, because we don't have collections April, you know, October to April. So there you go.
Thank you, Phil. And I will say, I am 99% sure, because I pitched this to my boss, that we will be offering a grant for permanent, to communities or regional groups for permanent household hazardous waste facilities. So stay tuned on that.
And having that on a regular, like we have the organic subcommittee, maybe it meets twice a year to start, but at least it brings us all together to facilitate and help DEP with what we need most and how to do it. And we just don't have a forum to organize it. And it's also on the other side of the equation, there's the enforcement side of DEP and the logistics and the manifesting that pop up as issues that get translated down through the county to us. So just all of it, you know, we're not hazardous waste experts. We kind of rely on the county down here, which is helpful, but it's something we think about all the time. Thank you.
Phil, if I could cut in real quickly, you're going to want to attend, and we'll broadcast this as soon as we have the details. Janine is working on our next MERC meeting for municipal recycling coordinators in early April. I think it's going to be, Janine, and it's going to focus on this explicitly. So stay tuned. We definitely got our eyes on this. Thank you, Phil. And then Amy, thanks for waiting, Amy.
That's okay, no problem. I've mentioned this
I don't think I've mentioned it to this group. I've mentioned it to other people. So I just finished working on a strategic plan for an organization for a program, which is part of Clean Water Action. I don't know if anybody from there is on the call today, but it's called Rethink Disposable, and it's been active on the West Coast, and they got a big grant from NOAA to expand to 6 other states, including Massachusetts and Minnesota. And so that program works with food service enterprises to help them transition from disposables to reusables for eating in. And they've done a lot of, I don't know if Marianne or anybody from NERC is on the call too, they've done a lot of analysis and case studies of the savings from doing that. And so I'm excited that they're going to be in Massachusetts. It just drives me nuts to see so much disposables used for eating in. I know the focus is on taking out too, but eating in is a problem. So keep your eyes open for that.
That's awesome. I'm busy typing in the chat. Amy, we need to talk. So thank you.
Okay, great. And I will, I'll put a link to Rethink Disposable in the chat too for anybody interested.
Absolutely. Awesome. Super exciting. Yeah.
I'll give it to you, Brooke, if you want.
Oh, I see Cheryl's hand up. Cheryl Snitzer.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to share the good news we've had at Stonehill College. So I am a chemistry professor there and chair of their Environmental Stewardship Council. And the bane of my existence for years was the single-use takeout containers from the dining venues, and that the students would go and throw it out 10 minutes later and be on campus. It was just mind-boggling. And many of our efforts we were able to reduce but not reuse. So I worked with a computer science capstone class 2 springs ago, and we created the beta version of an app. And we went from losing 1/3 of our reusable containers to getting nearly 100% returned. And I want to thank MassDEP for providing that micro grant to Stonehill for getting us up and running with the app. And it was so successful that I took it on the road, and I now the founder and CEO of Reusey, and I'm happy to say that it's working great at Stonehill. And now the vegan vegetarian restaurant in town, Red Lentil and Sharon, uses it also. So thank you for getting it started.
Kudos,
yes.
Cheryl.
Super exciting.
Thank you.
I actually have one other thing to share. I don't know if anybody from Product Stewardship Institute is on today, but speaking of restaurants, Amy, you sparked that, jogged my memory on that. Product Stewardship Institute, based in Boston, actually works across the country on extended producer responsibility laws, but they're getting involved in recycling. They have an EPA grant, and it focuses on, reading from this email from earlier this morning, on reuse at food service establishments. They're providing stipends or mini grants to restaurants or food service organizations, particularly immigrant and Black-owned businesses and or food service businesses serving lower income communities, to help them implement waste reduction and reuse. And they, as part of the project, they've created a explainer or promotional videos in multiple languages. And they also have created a restaurant source reduction guide. So I invited them to attend the meeting. I think, Amy, we all need to talk, right? So it sounds like we've got lots of folks working on this, and I didn't mean to give the impression that we're not focused on in-house dining. It's both in-house dining and takeaway. There's too much single-use stuff. So we see any opportunity to help a food service place eliminate disposables as being really important. And working in environmental justice communities is also a huge priority of the Department of MassDEP. And it's one business at a time. So this is really great to see some exciting stuff happening here. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? I know we've had an extremely active chat here.
I can offer a question from Emily. I see.
I'm sharing my email. Okay, well, thank you then. I wondered about that. Yeah, what would happen when I went to my email? Now what am I sharing?
Our contact info, which is perfect.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
So in the chat, I see Emily asking, I think to Amy, do you know who they're working with in Minnesota by chance? I think for Rethink Disposables.
Sure. In Massachusetts and Minnesota, it's a program of Clean Water Action, Clean Water Fund. So that's who it's happening through. And I don't know where things are at yet. I know that in some of the states, they're just starting to beef up the hiring for staff. I believe they have done that in Minnesota. I'm not sure. I know that they haven't done that yet in Pennsylvania, which is one of their other states. I don't know the status in Massachusetts. So they're really just starting to gear up to do the big expansion. And I just finished the draft strategic plan was just finalized this week too. So that will be informing some of their the details.
All right, I'm seeing more, somebody looking for, Stephanie Blumenthal looking for fixers for a Sheffield's, their second repair workshop out in Western Massachusetts. So, and we've got contact information there. I do, so this group, we've got an awful lot going on, as you can tell, between our deconstruction group, which is meeting roughly every 3 to 4 months. And then this group, our schools group, I'm wondering, and I did not prepare a poll, but maybe a nod or a shake of the head, how often would this group like to get together? Oh, Robin's saying, can't remember how to raise his hand. Robin Ingetron. So I do want to ask people, and then I'm going to have Robin unmute. I would like to get a sense from folks here, how often you would like to meet. I don't want to meet for the sake of meeting. I would like to keep people connected. We do have a Google group called the Mass Reduce Reuse Network, but we don't have a lot of people engaged on it. So, there are lots of different ways you can plug in. Again, feel free to post in the chat if you think this group should try and come back together 3 times a year. If you would like to bring in guest speakers, more guest speakers, I am open to ideas. In the meantime, we're going to be working on these various things we've talked about today to implement our Reduce Reuse Action Plan. And of course, you will get information. Everybody on this call, and actually there's more than 500 people in our database, will get information about new grant opportunities as well. So that's obviously a way that you can participate. But let's go to Robin Ingenthron. And just if you would unmute yourself, Robin.
Okay, hi, just a real quick thing to share with everybody because it's kind of a cutting edge problem right now. We did a presentation on solar panel reuse to NERC, which was in 3 parts. About a year ago, we were asked to redo the same presentation to NERC's counterpart in Florida, the Southeast Regional Recycling Council. And they've asked us to come back and re-present it to them because Florida, Brooke might remember, has always kind of followed, Massachusetts lead on going back to the reuse of cathode ray tubes. Anyway, I just wanted to share with everybody, there is a counter group right now that is trying to recommend that all the solar panels be destroyed and classified as hazardous or universal waste. It's a group out of California. There's people, it's like a massive shakeup right now. R2 has got people in there recommending that there be a limit on that they can't be reused if they're under 250 watts, which is a rich person's standard for reusing them. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's a national, it'll be a national disgrace if they classify them as universal waste, because the folks overseas are really not picky and really, really need these things when they're all going to be upgraded in 5 years.
Wow. We could have a solar work group, I think. Is there a solar work? Does anybody know about anybody looking at that, I mean, I've seen workshops. I know there've been a few offerings, but that's just unbelievable. Robin's always on the cutting edge of what's happening to technology that is, yes, Peter, solar panels, grr, I agree that, you know, technology that Americans don't have any use for anymore, but that, you know, most of the rest of the world would be more than happy to redeploy.
Well, it's even worse than that because, you know, The Economist reports that the United States might become the low-cost producer of solar panels by 2030 due to the Inflation Reduction Act. So,
wow.
So we're going to create a whole new, I mean, it's really weird because it's tied up in America's new industrial policy at this point. But really the right answer here is to keep the existing solar panels in place, in service, generating electricity, and not swap them out.
Yeah. It's an area I don't know I mean, I know very little about, but I'm writing it down and taking note. Okay, I see Fred Cullen. You want to unmute yourself, Fred?
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the invite to the meeting. So my name is Fred Cullen. I own Green Team Junkomoval. Many of you guys, there's some of you that already know me on this call. I just want to put this out there. Last year, we did community events throughout the Commonwealth. We teamed up with Eversource and National Grid to bring community events that were concentrated on recycling items, also as well as bringing down dehumidifiers, getting rebates, and also educating the public on MassSAFE programs. This year, we've actually extended that program. I just had a meeting with a few of the legislators the other day, as well as Eversource and National Grid. We're going to look to hit 100 towns this year. So we're looking to do 45 events and cover over 100 towns. There's one good thing about, there's a lot of good things about this program, but there's one major good thing about this program. It's funding. Believe it or not, Eversource and National Grid and myself, we fund the actual marketing of the events and getting it out to the public. Last year in Western Mass alone, we had our events, we had about 300, 400 cars per event. This year, we're actually going to target a lot of the western and central part of the state due to the fact that we found that last year, the numbers showed that at the events, we had a larger turnout due to the fact that, you know, there was not many options out there for them. So we're actually going to be focusing on the central and western part of the state as well as the other communities that we touched last year. So I just really wanted to throw that out there. If anybody out there that needs a program in their community, they could reach out and maybe we'd be able to come down and help you out.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred. I have a question about that, actually. So my understanding is that these units, whether they're air conditioners or, I don't know, dishwashers, washing machines, they're not actually getting repaired or reused. They're just getting recycled for scrap metal. Is that correct? So it's really an end of tailpipe use.
No, that's a false statement because some of the
okay.
So because
please
some of the
enlighten us, please. Yeah.
Yes, because Habitat takes some of the ACs as well, especially when you're during the hot months. Also, any refrigerator that is under 10 years old, okay, that is in good shape. Yep, we're really looking to make sure that gets donated too. So last year, okay, just to back up a little. Last year was like the real full year that I really went hard at this. My first year was just six events for 11 towns. So last year we went from 30 to 72. So there was a lot in that 1 year that we took on that we were trying to figure out how to make it all work. So like the tires turn around and they go to get scrapped for to Connecticut for energy. Okay, so where our materials go, they are getting recycled and reused. And also we are conscientious, and I'm making it even more of a conscientious effort this year on the plan is, again, some of those white goods that can be reused, we're really pushing to have reuse this year as well. But yes, some of those ACs,
Okay.
they are going to Habitat to be resold because
Yeah.
there's,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's
I
great
think,
to
I
hear.
think it is great to hear, but I think in this context, if we can stay focused on reduce and reuse that and repair, that would be most
absolutely.
beneficial. So
Yes.
maybe if you want to report back at a future meeting about how much goes to reuse, that would be terrific to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
Thank
Definitely,
you.
guys.
All right. Anybody else want to share? If not, I'm going to give you 5 minutes back of your time. I saw, feel free to drop me a line if you have thoughts about how often you want to meet or what you'd like to do at these meetings. Again, I'm not a big fan of just meeting for the sake of meeting. I like meetings to be productive and useful and to spark energy and make connections with people. That's sometimes what I think is the most valuable thing. But we also want to let folks know that we are working every day on implementing our action plan and are looking forward to disseminating the additional resources that we have. So, I am going to be saving the chat because there's been just a huge amount of information shared. I love this from Allison, Melrose's recycling coordinator, that you had 3 residents spearhead a reuse and repair. Oh, wow, a shop. Interesting. Is that a storefront, or is it a pop-up?
So they have a semi-permanent location located in Melrose, and I say semi-permanent because the lease ends in September and they're looking for a new location after that, but they're looking to be more permanent. Yes, Rachel, the Loop. Yes.
That is great news. I will say one other thing, speaking of space, my colleagues and I were at a conference last weekend, Mass Municipal Association, and spoke with Mass Development, the head of real estate there. And Irene gave them the full court press, one of our regional coordinators, about how desperately we need space to hold onto materials, things like doors, windows, appliances, to, again, bridge that gap between the supply and the demand, and how you move stuff or where you store it in between. So I'm emailing Claire McNeil, I believe is her name. Claire O'Neill. She apparently was very interested. Mass Development is a quasi-public organization, and they have custody of or help manage a lot of property, including some surplus property that may be in state ownership, or maybe privately owned. So we're exploring that option for those that are in the materials reuse world. I see Camilla from Cambridge has her hand up. Hi, Camilla.
Hi, this is all really exciting. Definitely, yeah, gets good energy. I guess my question is a bit, is associated with the deconstruction. I'm wondering if you guys have reached out to affordable housing developers and affordable housing nonprofits around deconstruction, because how the ordinance recommendations that you might end up with could really impact the affordable housing community, and you would want to have them as collaborators rather than resisting it.
That's a really, really good question. I'm glad you brought that up. So yes, it's written down. We're going to follow up on that. We are, yeah, we're also networking with historic preservation folks and historic preservation planners who will be part of our next meeting. But I think affordable housing, that's really critical. So thank you, Camilla. Appreciate that.
I agree. And if you happen to have any contacts, or if there's an association that
Yes.
you happen to be connected with, by all means, please feel free to reach out, because we're casting that net pretty wide and learning as we go. So thank you very much.
Yeah, there's so many great questions here. Yes, repurpose empty office parks, and that may be what Mass Development can help us with. And thank you to Kit for posting about plastics-free restaurants, which we were sharing about at our school meeting last week, because they will pay for durable dishware as long as it replaces disposable, is my understanding. So, okay, well, we've managed to use up those extra 5 minutes. I will share the chat. We can send the chat out. We will be sharing the meeting recording and the PowerPoints from Emily and from DEP. I really thank you all for sticking with us. We had over 100 people on this call up until maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes. So huge amount of interest, and we're just thrilled to see you, and thank you for all that you do. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.
Brooke, I'll send you those slides here.
Okay,
Yeah.
terrific.
Sorry I
Thank
didn't
you,
send them
Emily.
before.
No worries. No worries. It was great. All righty. Take
Good
care.
to see you. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Brooke, it's Allison from Useful. Do you have a few minutes just
Hey.
to touch base?
I do. Can you give me 1 second? I need to just
Yes.
run and do a quick bio break.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna get food soon. I'm so hungry. Not for breakfast. Okay. Hi, Elsa. Do you want to just give me a call? Let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, wait a second. Sorry. That's my bad.
I also realized I
Sorry
didn't
about
unmute
that. Ever
myself.
since I switched over to, I finally plugged my computer into my docking station that they gave us at work. And bizarrely, audio does not work on Zoom anymore. It works on Teams, unless I put in my earbuds. So when I got at the beginning of this meeting, Emily, our guest speaker, was on, and she's talking, and I'm talking to her, and I'm like, "Can you hear me?" She's like, "I can hear you." I'm like, "I can't hear you. I can't hear you." Go, leave the meeting, come back to the meeting. Poor Emily. I'm like, "Check your audio settings." And then finally I was like, "I'll just plug in my audio." She said, "Maybe it's your audio." Of course it was. Do you want to give me a call?
Sure. Is it the
Okay.
857 number? That's
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And it's right here in my hand. So talk to you
perfect.
in a few.
I'll talk to you in
Okay.
2 seconds.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.